Can you hear me? Okay. So thanks for the invitation. Thanks for setting the expectation high. My name is Viktor Belényesi. I've been dealing with software development for 16 years, and I've been in mobile development since 2009. And I'm going to talk about who is more functional in mobile. Let me start with a short story. 3 weeks ago, right after getting the confirmation for an accommodation for our very first family holiday, I received an email from Agi about the speaker dinner before the conference, and I quickly realized two things. One is that I forgot the conference and I made the booking for the very same weekend. And the second is that I had no idea what to talk about. The first, after a slight panic attack, I thought quickly, thanks for Airbnb, so I just rescheduled the accommodation and getting back yesterday. The second is a bit more difficult because maybe I'm too old or read too much, but usually it's hard for me to hear something really special or interesting you cannot find browsing tech news, blogs, Twitter in a conference. So I'd like to talk about something really interesting. But honestly, I did not have any topic in my head, so I dug deep into myself, looking for a topic which is really authentic, and it's a hard question because what can I tell you as an average mortal that you don't know about Swift? How could I give you something you don't have already? So I found out I really love to learn new languages, compare them hoping to find the holy grail of programming, the perfect language for the developers, the ultimate solution. And actually I have had it for years. Scala. Scala is the perfect language for me. And I know that it's a Swift conference, so I hope you don't mind, but at least it's functional. Okay, let me tell you what makes me think of speaking about other languages in a Swift conference is a good idea. We're all dealing with mobile development. So from time to time, it's worth checking other languages platforms because at some point you could face the challenges of supporting multiple platforms. Okay, sorry, I couldn't resist. It's so actual in several axes. So, Android. And when it comes to Android, Java is not an option, at least not for me. I started my career as a Java developer, spent my best years with it. It was nice and sweet, but it's over. What else? That's where Scala enters. Despite the fact that Scala is perfect, it has some issues. It's hard. It's very, very hard. Believe me. Or if you don't believe me, just check out this function. The first two lines is just the signature of the function, and the rest is the body. And Scala is JVM based, so we cannot use it in iOS or in any native environment. And it has no impact on mobile. So because Scala is so perfect, nobody dares to use it or create awesome frameworks. Of course, I'm aware some need backend projects written in Scala, such as Akka, and which is functional and reactive. But it's not about Android. So, adding all of this together, it would not be a fair competition for Swift. So let's find something else. Kotlin. You know, Krusty. Rusty has always been like this. No way to please him. Anyway, Kotlin seems to be amazing for the first glance, as all the languages you just learned. But in reality, you know this proverb said by Pablo Picasso, Steve Jobs, T.S. Eliot, or somebody else according to Google. But it's a good saying, and you might realize that Kotlin and Scala and Swift are pretty similar, especially Kotlin and Swift born in the same years, so nobody knows who copies who. I think it's a sensitive topic, but let's get into it. So if you're not familiar with Kotlin, let me show you the basics. That's Swift, declaring a variable, a constant, an optional, and that is Kotlin. Pretty similar. Fortunately, optionals are first-class citizens in Kotlin as well, so it's not as bad as you might expect. Okay, what about functions? In Kotlin, you can define functions as expressions, but you can use the same old syntax as in Swift. Actually, I quite like the expression format. It makes more thirst the language. Extensions. Extensions are important in the functional world because we can convert free function call to member method calls and thus maintain the builder pattern style, something like this. Okay, how can you define extensions in Swift? We are familiar with it. And what about Kotlin? Wow. Expressions again. Okay, it's not just about the expression, but you just take a type and the dot and the signature and you're done. I like the simplicity of the Kotlin approach. I know Swift extensions are more about playing with generics, but believe me, you can do the same thing with Kotlin as well. It's also as powerful, maybe it's more powerful. What about operators? Custom operators plays important role in a functional world. They help you to write expressions in a more terse way. Think about monads and binding. Unfortunately, I'm not clever and brave enough to touch these topics, and I guess there are plenty of other presentations about these sensitive monad, functors, and stuff like that. Anyway, let's compare the syntax of creating custom operators. As you can see, Swift is better in defining precedences, associativity. In Kotlin, there are predefined symbols, and they are translated to member function calls. And if your type implements these functions, that you're ready to use the operators. And for more, you can define custom operators. The last line is about that, using that, I don't know how it calls, backtick syntax. And for more, Kotlin has this infix notation. It's from Scala, so if you have a member function or extension function, which has a single parameter, and they marked with this infix prefix keyword, then you can use them in an infix way. I'd like to see something like this in Swift. It would ease the DSL creation in Swift, I think. Okay, let's see something more interesting. everybody likes numbers. I'm not here to compare the speed of Kotlin and Swift, but we can compare the speed of iterative and the functional solution of the same problem. Let me read this. Sum of even consecutive integers from 1 to 1000. Okay, let's see some code. And the terminal. That's it. So, I wrote a small framework to compare different versions of the same solution, both in Swift and in Kotlin. They are pretty similar. And let's see how they perform. Some ASCII art. So, as you can see, the iterative solution is almost 20 times slower than, or 20 times faster than the functional in Swift, and 10 times faster in Kotlin. It's an interesting question why. Let's figure out together tomorrow by debugging Java assembly and Swift intermediate languages. I don't want to get into it because it's hard to project the Java assembly, and most probably I would fail to figure out in live coding. So back to the slides. So as you can see, iterative is 20 times faster in Swift and 10 times faster in Kotlin. So you have to pay the price. You have to pay the price if you go functional, and you should keep in mind. I read about that in Scala, these mappings are implemented using loops behind the scenes. I'm not totally sure about the same in Swift, but we will find out tomorrow. Okay, some more numbers. Tail call optimization, TCO stands for it. Back to the code. So let me comment this out. And let's have just a minute. And let's use the same mini framework to compare the two solutions. There is a recursive sum function, and there is the tail recursive version of the same function. It's pretty simple. Let's check out if it makes any difference. What the fuck?
It's called this foundation. Yeah, it's foundation.
Again.
Yes.
So, as you can see, tail recursivity matters in both languages. Swift performs better in this field. We will find out why tomorrow. Oh, okay. Something's going on. Oh. So yes, the result. Because it is 4 times faster in Swift and 3 times faster in Kotlin. Okay, what about semantics? What about the expressive power of Swift and Kotlin? I prefer writing functional trains as clean as there's as possible. So in order to achieve this coding nirvana, I like to pass function by name to a filter and map to make it looks like this. So this is the first is the official way, the second is a slightly more improved, the third one is really terse, but I like this way. So define the filter and map functions separately, and then just pass the name, and it looks amazing for me. So this approach works well with free functions or pure functions in both languages, but what happens if you'd like to use a member function as a parameter? Then it's getting complicated. Consider the following snippet. So there is a list, there is a foo class with some member variable or constant, there is a simple function, and you'd like to pass that function by name to the map. What happens? I think it's a valid use case because if maybe there are situations when you'd like to combine the power of object-oriented and functional programming. Fortunately, both Swift and Kotlin makes it possible, or at least I thought till yesterday evening. So some commenting. Again, I have to do this commenting play because Swift sticks to call the entry point file main, so I cannot pass a file name to my start shell script. So if you're aware of a more elegant solution, let me know. So here is the code in Swift, and here is the code in Kotlin. Pretty similar again. Kotlin has this weird list of and hash map of something. I don't get it, but it's fine if you get used to it. So let's try to compile first. By the way, this shell script does nothing special. Just print the ASCII art and compiles the Swift and run it and do the same with the Kotlin. And here is my cheat sheet if I got lost in the live coding. So let's try to compile it. So first attempt is to pass the member function by name. It works in Swift, and it has some problems with Kotlin. So actually, Kotlin does not allow to do that, as far as I know. which is strange because if I create and add to function literal with the following syntax, like it plus C, and pass it to the map, then it will work. Yes, I did it. Let's try the same thing in Swift. Create a function literal. And okay, it doesn't compile because you cannot use the member C, because by the declaration time, self is not accessible. So what we have to do is to make this a lazy variable, which makes sense. Okay. Oh. Yes, we have to pass, according to Swift 3, the self. Or we have to add the self call. And it just works. So, back to the slides. So, function literal and member function is equivalent in Swift, more or less, but not in Kotlin. Do you have any idea why? No, I'm gonna tell you today, in a minute or two. So, any guess? No, it's not about JVM, it's about language design. So actually these two things have a totally different types. This Scala function stuff could be familiar from Scala or any other JVM languages. That's how they solve this function, not first class, and create an object from that and has an apply function or stuff like that. And yes, in Swift, it's equivalent. So in 2014, when I first read about Swift, I found it interesting that member functions are basically curried static functions on the instance, and they are returning closures which captures the instance. It was an interesting topic in the Swift book. By that time, I wasn't deep in functional programming. I didn't care. But I did it this week. I did get it this week. Why it's important? Because, so as I mentioned, the member functions are static functions, and these two things are the same. So what happens here, that higher order functions in Swift, such as filter and map, accepts a closure with some special signature, depends on the higher order function itself, and the closure, of course, captures the variable, in this case, the self. And that's what this curried approach gives us, and let us use this very nice syntax. And that's what I miss from Kotlin. Some clever guys tried to sold me the idea of using this double semicolon to access Kotlin's member functions, but it simply didn't work because in Kotlin member functions are simply functions. Okay, I thought it's interesting, but maybe just for me. Anyway, so who is more functional? What have we learned today? I don't see a clear winner here, just some room for improvement on both sides. I quite like Kotlin's extension syntax, and in the same time, I like this curried approach of Swift. So why should we learn new languages? As the Bulgarian says, the more languages you speak, the more of a person you are. And of course, to make Krusty angry, because COBOL and Objective-C are the only real languages. Thank you. Questions?
Do you have something like structs in Kotlin?
Sorry?
Do you have something like structs with value semantics in Kotlin?
Extracts?
Structs.
Structs. Yes, they have something similar called data classes, which are not really structs, just some syntactic sugar. So if you create a data class, then you get the hash and is equal for free, but they are not structs. I think structs don't exist in JVM at all. So you can, but in terms of immutability, this while keyword is kind of similar to let, but Kotlin has some extras such as lazy init, which helps you to avoid this implicitly unwrapped sheet with double exclamation marks. So lazy vars are like this. Is this Kotlin? So like this. Basically, lazy var is a promise from your side that it will get initialized before the first call, and it really helps you with the syntax, but it has some another construct called lazy by delegate, which I cannot explain you at the moment. So, but it serves the same thing. Lazy variable declaration you can use with non-primitive types. With primitive types, you simply pass some default value and change it later. But it's really an improvement over the double exclamation mark. For example, in view controllers, when you have to pass some dependency.
So I saw a green robot in your slides, so I assume you do some Android. So if you could write Swift in Android development, would you do that, or would you stick with Scala, Kotlin, Java?
Actually, I tried, and it's not impossible, but the game is the same as in iOS. That if you want to use C++ in iOS, that you can do it, but you are your own regarding UI libraries, network libraries, stuff like that. So basically, you can write some code, but you should pull all the necessary things and do the bindings using GNI to the Android's UI libraries. So it's kind of a pain in the ass. I would.
But if that problem would solve,
Yes?
what would you pick?
Honestly, Kotlin seems to be in a better shape at the moment. So I know Apple is a big company, but JetBrains guys are pretty smart and strict to the plan. They created a lot of library for Kotlin. My favorite is Enco, which is Android Kotlin, and it really makes it easier to access the UI, which is defined in XML, and it has tons of great stuffs. And in the Java world, they are not afraid of code generating using these annotation mechanisms. So Kotlin is superior in design, and I think it's not that much older than Swift. So it's pretty interesting. The only problem is that it's a JVM language. So I wish it was a native language. And as you saw that this functional programming is more supported by this expression syntax, so everything could be an expression, a switch. You shouldn't do dirty tricks to have a switch expression, and somehow functional style doesn't make much slower in Kotlin. So yes, but I guess Swift will catch up soon. I hope. It's open source. Yeah. Yes?
Just an addition there. As far as I know, the Kotlin guys are working on VM extensions. You might get your native.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that, but it's a good news. Don't get me wrong, I quite like Swift. I think it's a big deal over Objective-C, but there are some other languages, and you should keep your eyes open and check out from time to time Scala, Haskell, JavaScript. Yeah. So if it's about cross-platform development, maybe I would go with the JavaScript. So actually, I created a proof of concept using a JavaScript core on iOS and duct tape in Android and JavaScript core in Android, and it's killer. I mean, you can use almost the same JavaScript code to drive the two different platforms, and it's fast. Yeah, I tried several things such as Mono and PhoneGap and Titanium and C++ and Hex. I don't know. Yes?
You just mentioned the whole list of languages like that for cross-platform, and you didn't mention Xamarin, which to me seems like an excellent thing to use, but I haven't met anybody who actually uses it.
Yes, it's a very good question because in my last workplace at Prezi, we took the responsibility of assessing Xamarin as a cross-platform solution. It took 2 months to evaluate, and I had to give up on New Year's Eve. That was the deadline, and since I have a baby boy, we didn't have any parties, so I didn't have any better to do but compiling Mono for 64-bit, because they didn't have 64-bit on OS X, and we ended up that a cross-platform solution which doesn't support one platform but all the others is not the finest solution for us. But Xamarin is amazing. By that time, it had its own Mono Studio or Mono editor, which was pretty shitty, let's say. But it was 2 years ago. But using Modev view model design pattern, we could achieve that have the business logic in a portable C# code and native UI code in a non-portable C#, and it was amazing. The only problem was that the lack of the 64-bit support on OS X. So that's why we dropped. Actually, I was a big believer of Xamarin, and I convinced our CTO, and I failed. And yeah, end of story.
Any more questions?
Thank you.